the 20th century model of disaster recovery and business continuity is, do we have a plan? Oh yeah, you go over to your shelf, pull it off the shelf, you dust it off, it's about this thick, and you pop it on the ground, and you say, this is what we're going to do if anything bad ever happens. Oh yeah, we test it every 6 months. Here it is. We brought people in from the outside. We've done it. Thud factor is important. But the 20th century model of disaster recovery says something bad is going to happen someday. No, something bad may happen someday. And if it does, here's what we'll do. But the 21st century model of disaster recovery and business continuity, because of terrorism, because of pandemics, because of climate change, because of so many other issues, but in particular climate change and sustainability issues. I mean, we're now living in a world where there are tornadoes in downtown Atlanta. That has not happened in the history of Atlanta. So the 21st century model of disaster recovery and business continuity, I propose, should be multiple bad things are going to happen. And here is how we are going to adapt and continue. It's different. Multiple things are going to happen, perhaps simultaneously. And this is how we will adapt. Because it's really about adaptation at this point, and flexibility and mobility, and it's different. It's a different world. So I developed this checklist, and I put it out in CSO magazine. I write for them every other month. And it's a checklist I propose a corporate security strategy for climate change and sustainability. It's a big issue. Okay. We've got an hour, right? That's what we're talking about? No, I mean, till 5:30.
No, till 5. Till 5:20.
Oh, good. Fine, we're fine.
7 more minutes.
Good. So, let's go to the movies very briefly. So, it occurred to me, when Hiroshima and Nagasaki happened, our collective consciousness, our collective unconscious, we had to process a lot of grief and fear about atomic weapons. And the Japanese produced Godzilla and Mothra and all these movies about radioactive monsters that came from the sea and destroyed the cities, and then humanity had to fight back, and then there were radioactive ants coming out of giant ants coming out of the sewers in Los Angeles, and some U.S. versions of the same phenomena of the human psyche trying to get its mind around the nuclear age through cinema and process its fear. And so then I was thinking about, well, how do we relate to cybersecurity, to cyber risk? And, well, how do we relate to the information age in our cinema? And it became very interesting because all of them had The Matrix, a world taken over by computers in which where humans are used as batteries, and you have to take the red pill or the blue pill and unplug yourself, and then you fight the machines, and then at the end there's peace between man and machines. Terminator, another computer system gone crazy, destroying the human race. Blade Runner, in which detectives hunt down androids who are barely, almost imperceptibly different than humans because they rose up on their off-world colonies. And 2001, where the on-board supercomputer rebels against the astronauts, has a psychotic breakdown when they're in space. And War Games, in which a juvenile hacker breaks into a Pentagon system thinking it's this incredibly cool game, which it partly is, and touches off the potential of a nuclear war. So, God, what's beyond this? What's beyond this kind of primitive fear of the cyber? What does it all mean, and what are we looking at? And then just quickly, 3 stories that came to me recently. This is something that they put up in the MIT Museum. Have any of you seen this? You can do this online. Have you done it? And you can get yourself in a barcode, or get the Googled version of yourself, a search engine version of yourself in a barcode. I saw many things fly by about myself, and then I saw many things that were not about me, but were about somebody else named Richard Power, and it all ends up in a barcode at the end. It's an artwork, but it really tells something about where we're going. And then there's Twitter. This is an excellent piece in the Huffington Post by a great writer, Peter Dow, who wrote this after some of the Twitter's involvement in what's happening in Iran and what was happening in China and other things, and what's happening here in our political debates, and how Twitter, he says, ongoing process of pouring the contents of hundreds of millions of minds into a global cyber canvas, and really looking at that we're talking about a mass stream of consciousness, and where everybody's stream of consciousness is accessible to everybody else on Twitter, and then something evolves out of that, which is something like, which has an existence of its own. It's a different world. And then, did anybody see the 60 Minutes episode? 60 Minutes episode about a technology. I know that there's a video on the web of them doing incredible things with monkeys and in computer brain interfaces. These are people with a scientist with an extraordinary injury, and now he can communicate through his thoughts. Like his, and communicate and have his words and thoughts come out on the computer in words or sound that other people can understand. And there's this very funny quote. It's an extraordinary story, and it's part of our future. It's part of our near future. And that there's this great moment in it. Now I can imagine some people watching this interview are thinking to themselves, wait a minute, they're connecting the brain to a computer. Are we moving in the direction of reading people's thoughts? Is this mind control around the corner? No, it's not. It's certainly not mind control. It's different from reading other people's thoughts. It's important to realize this. Well, that's true. Of course, it's not what they're doing. They're providing incredible capability to people that will change a lot. But it has implications. It absolutely has implications. Even this much has implications. But you, as people who sit around and think about security and risk, could sit down with this concept and come up with some very interesting challenges and very interesting points of contemplation about our near future. So if you remember the drawing I did in the beginning of the global economy and cyberspace, and how in the 21st century it's really, they occupy the same space. I look at the physical and the psychological and the cyber. I mean, in the 20th century they kind of met. They met. We touched the keyboard. The keyboard touches us. Our minds and our thoughts are hopefully intersect. But with the computer world, we touch. We meet like at the borders. But in the early 21st century, as you see from that 60 Minutes documentary, they're already interpenetrating all three. And probably by mid-21st century, many of the issues that we project in our creative imagination in those mythical movies are the kinds of issues we'll be dealing with. So the question is, what is the answer? The barcode, yourself as a barcode in that MIT museum experiment, that shows that we're redefining identity in the information age. And the piece about the Twitter is pointing us to the fact that we're redefining consciousness in the information age. And the 60 Minutes documentary shows us that we're